starting off in Bakewell today. I'm going for Chatsworth. And then up onto Moor for one and only Ethel today. We're just about to cross over the Monsal Trail. Built in 1863 to link Manchester and London. It's on the bridge now. There it is, running down there. There is the top of the station. Look at it. Being converted now into a walk. Runs from Haddon all the way across to Buxton. It was originally going to run the other side of that valley there. That'll put it straight through the Chatsworth Estate. Upon hearing that his view might be ruined, the Duke of Devonshire said, "Oh, no, and insisted that it run a really awkward route just above Bakewell. It was called Bakewell Station for... Oh, it's boggy around here. Bakewell Station for many years. And it was basically the Duke of Devonshire's private railway station. There was talk of Haddon Hall using it. And Duke of Devonshire got wind of that and thought, nope, I'm not sharing train stations, and insisted that the East Midland Rail Company build a separate station for him called Haddon Station, about a mile further down the track. People of such high calibre don't want to be sharing train stations. And to get in on the act, a mile in the other direction, is Thornbridge Hall. Now a very popular brewery. It's all Theakston's, Jaipur. They also didn't want to share train stations. So they had their own station built, which became known as Great Longstone. So within the space of 3 miles, or maybe a bit less, 3 train stations serving 3 dukes because they don't like to share. These were men of principle. Their principle being, poor people trains are not going to ruin my view. And they were willing to spend other people's money to achieve that principle. So they got their own station. But that wasn't enough for Haddon. He decided, not only do I not want to share trains with you people, I don't even want to see them, so you can dig a tunnel. Thus we ended up with the Haddon Tunnel. Paid for by the East Midlands Rail Company. So that old man Haddon wouldn't have to see a train. This is when men were men. Roll on 100 years, everybody's happy. Everybody's using their own train station and not talking to each other. Having to have that awkward exchange of glances when you're buying Costa in the morning. And beaching comes along. I've had a couple of world wars. Cars have been invented. And thousands and thousands of miles of track are effectively superfluous. They're not used, they're not needed. So he starts cutting and cutting and cutting. Tens of thousands of miles of track he got rid of. Rolling stock, jobs, train stations, the lot. Luckily, Bakewell escaped, and so did the rest of the line. And then the Tories got booted out, and in came a Labour government, and the people of Bakewell sighed a sigh of relief, as did the three dukes that would no longer need to share a station, or will continue to not share a station. Labour Transport Minister Barbara Castle comes in. Bang! First thing she does, close that line down. By the 80s it was a semi-derelict, overgrown. So it got reopened as a walk. And it's continued to this day. I've seen better days. Walking over Bakewell golf course. Don't come at me, golfers, it's a right of way. I'm allowed, as long as I don't get hit by a golf ball. I don't see anyone. Surely nobody's playing today. View across the valley there. Bakewell in the valley floor. The mist, as ever, covering the tops. So I've got about 3 hours, maybe 4 for that to burn off. Otherwise, Lees Hall is another zero view, and I maintain my 100% record of seeing bugger all from the top of these Ethels. Taking our last few steps out of the Wye Valley from Bakewell, crossing over the top into the Derwent, and then down into Chatsworth. So, just that way. Somewhere over there's Lees Moor. Looks like I'm not going to get a view again, guys. Well, this rather innocuous looking stone, we're just a few feet onto the Chatsworth Estate, look, that road there's the edge of the Chatsworth Estate, is actually a listed building. It's got some markings on it, you can't quite make them out. It's called a guide stone, and there's hundreds of them over the Peak District, probably hundreds more. They're old-fashioned road signs. Gives you directions to places. This one will tell you where to get to Chatsworth, Chesterfield and Bakewell. take a look at the Chatsworth Estate, shall we? So, somewhere right down there is Chatsworth House. So just coming down into Edensor village, just on the outskirts of Chatsworth. There's been our village called Edensor since Anglo-Saxon times, listed in the Domesday Book as belonging to Henry de Ferreras. Good name. Stood for many hundreds of years and it spread all the way down to the river. Roll on 1762 and the 4th Duke of Devonshire. You don't like that. Once again, poor people spoiling his view. He's having a big landscaping job done. A Capability Brown, no less. So he engages Joseph Paxton to knock it down, the entire village, and move it 500 yards so that he can't see it from his veranda whilst he's drinking his gin and tonics. It's a baller move. These days, that's what it looks like. A good job, to be fair to him. That spire's 51 metres tall and it's listed. 50 buildings in this village are listed, and there can't be more than 60 buildings in total. Including weird stuff like a sundial. Who lists a sundial?
I'd work 2 or 3 days a week.
Now that's Chatsworth House. Just below it the River Derwent. Built in 1553 by a woman, no less. Bess of Hardwick, who actually became known as Elizabeth Cavendish. Thus the Cavendish family found its home. Stayed there for the next 500 years. There was one minor incident during the English Civil War on account of these being staunch royalists. and they were invited to flee the country, which they did for 40 years, 1640s to the 1680s. Eventually, because of the work that they did whilst they were over in France, their earldom, if that's a word, was updated to a duke. So just getting down to the bottom end of Chatsworth now, in Carlton Lees. You can just about see Chatsworth poking up from those trees there. Scandal, you ask? Georgina Cavendish. She lived life. She enjoyed every vice that God could give her. Gin palaces, opium dens. She had a ruinous gambling habit. But she's a political advocate. She's an early adopter of the Whig Party, which is basically the forerunner to the suffragettes. 100 years before Pankhurst and company. Predictably, the press didn't like her. She was a rabble-rouser. She was a trouble causer. So they depicted her as sexually deviant. That she'd sleep with men for votes. Of course, the deviancy wasn't that the men were sleeping with her. The men with the votes. Sleeping with the woman without the vote. Good to see how far we've come on. The irony is, she was almost certainly a lesbian. She regularly needed to go on retreats for her health. One such one, she took herself away from Chatsworth to improve her fertility, of all things. Where did she go? Brighton. Yes, that Brighton, and it was still like Brighton then. Out of nowhere, she became absolutely lockstep friends with a woman called Mary Graham. Exchanged letters for many years, and they were passionate. Eventually they fell out of touch when Mary Graham had to be removed from the UK for warmer climes on account of lung conditions. Thought that the warm weather might help. Another example of one of her retreats, this time with her husband. It's a bath. And once again she fell madly in love, maybe, with a woman called Elizabeth Foster, who eventually moved into Chatsworth. The three of them formed a love triangle, and Foster lived there until she died. Next scandal to rock Chatsworth was another sex scandal, because of course it was. This time with the 6th Duke, famously known as the Bachelor Duke. His housekeeper died, can't remember her name. And he befriended a woman called Elizabeth Bickle. They're all called Elizabeth. Her nickname was the Tigress. She lived up to that nickname. She would host parties in the Duke's private chambers with, and I quote, many men. She was also famous for bribing other people in the court, offering dresses and silk and food rations and stuff. And all around a conniving character. Maybe this one was a legitimate smear on her good name. Just heading out of the Derwent Valley. The Chatsworth behind that tree. Just see the river peeking out there, look. Beeley Moor, Rowsley Moor, and down the valley. So I'm a few hundred metres from the summit, Lees Moor. And I might not get a view this time on account of the fact that it's covered in trees. I haven't actually done any research on this one. It didn't look very interesting. I'm most of the way up Lees Moor now. Got that bit left to do. Another guide stone. Not as well preserved as the one at Chatsworth. The markings are pretty much faded off. Still pretty cool though. Bit of spring there. Starting to get pretty mysterious. Well, this is the summit. I think it's actually just behind me. In them woods somewhere. And that's the view. A Christmas tree farm. Who would have thunk it? Ethel number 4. Lees Moor. So a quick note. I just checked and apparently this is on private property. And I shouldn't be here. Maybe that's some kind of illicit Christmas tree farm. So to the landowner, my apologies. It was unintentional. We're just coming out of the trees. It's got a very kind of the Baskervilles vibe going on up here. More Christmas trees. Very pretty though. So just coming off the top of Lees Moor towards Haddon Hall, which I don't think I can get to. I think it's private land. I don't want to keep going on private land today. It's much older than Chatsworth. It was originally a grace and favour property that William the Conqueror gave to William Peverell. They're all called William. Same Peverell as Peverell Castle in Castleton. I think they had something to do with Nottingham Castle as well. Unlike Chatsworth, after the Peverells, went through an absolute procession of people, families that owned it. the Avenels. Just get down this boggy bit. The Vernons. So finally in 1703, the Manners family, John Manners, the 9th Earl, became the first Duke of Rutland, with Haddon Hall as his seat, and it's stayed in the Manners family ever since. So, we're about 8 miles in, and that white blob there is the roof of the cattle market in Bakewell. So we went up that way, round the back of that hill, it's trying to focus on my finger, round the back of that hill, and then over the top, that's Lee's Moor there, still trying to focus on my finger, and then we'll come back down this hill, and down that way is Haddon Hall. So this, believe it or not, is the top end of the Monsal Trail. And that is Haddon Tunnel. It's obviously not accessible. So we're back in the Wye Valley. Very high river. And over this bridge, which is just above the water. Look at that. So I don't know if you can make out that fence there. I'm going to walk on a path down there, but there's a pasture. This entire field is flooded. So I think I'm going to aim for the road. It's only 100 yards or two. I don't fancy trying to navigate that. So here's a question that nobody's asked, but I'm going to answer it anyway. What's with the leg? What have you actually done? What have I actually done? Let me tell you. So 2016, summer, beautiful day, and I was cycling home from work because I'm a cyclist. For those of you that know Sheffield, I was cantering along Carlisle Street East. At a fair lick, pretty flat, you can get some good speed up. And a guy turned across me, cut me up. I don't know if you've tried to stop a bike going 40 miles an hour. Takes a minute. So I went straight into the back of him, or straight through the middle of him I should say, and bike parts and body parts distributed themselves along the road. I don't know if I lost consciousness. I think I did. I don't remember the next hour or two. Apparently I was bandaged up by a very kindly gentleman, first aider, which probably saved my leg. I was taken to Sheffield Northern General, again if you know the area, you know the hospital. And nurses came, doctors came, paying not much interest in my leg, which is where all the pain was, and all of the interest in my head, because it turns out that my cycling helmet was in bits and they were worried that you can lose a leg, you can't lose a head. So MRIs, x-rays, all sorts of other stuff later. Turns out the surgeon came to speak to, switch hands, speak to me and my fiance. Again, I don't really remember. And she basically said, we get married in a week. And the doctor said, no you don't. The only decision we need to make right now is whether we wheel him directly into surgery or whether he's stable enough to wait until the morning. At that point I laughed because I was high on morphine. That's the wrong decision. That was the wrong reaction. But I did. And it turns out I was okay to stay till the morning, so I got the proper team, not the emergency team. Not that there's anything wrong with the emergency team. So the 7-hour operation, 7 3/4 hours to realign my leg. I broke my femur, the bottom one. I can't remember what that one's called. But weirdly, the one that caused the most problems with the tibial plateau, which is the kind of big bulb at the top of your bone, that had cracked in half, and apparently that's really hard to treat. I'd also lost a lot of flesh. They took the bandage off and fag ends and pigeons flew out and it was all a mess, so they had to cut it away. So I've got half a leg of stuff missing. And then they bandaged me up, attached some corner to my leg for a month to get everything to fix. And I had to learn to walk again, which was fun, I think. I thought I was alright. I thought it was just a physical thing. And looking back, I was struggling and I didn't really say anything, and I probably should have. So there's a lesson for you. Don't suffer in silence. It's not worth it. But 10 years on, here we are. 4 Ethels down, 91 to go. So we missed this morning's trig point because we were lost in the woods. There's Elport Heights. I'm looking down into Bakewell. I'm not going to scale this fence wall combo because it is private property. Can I reach? Touched it, look, there we go. So the week running up to that wedding, my wedding, our wedding, I was sat in hospital, recovering as best I could. The head nurse, matron type, gave me a list of things that I needed to be able to do to go to my own wedding. Things like stand up by myself, be able to pick things up off the floor, that kind of stuff. And it got to the Friday and she came round and we went through the list, and it was just a flat no all the way across the board. Can you do these things? Nope. Can you do those things? Nope. What are you going to do now, nurse? Very nervously, she said, I'm going to let you go. Please, for the love of God, come back in one piece. I get the feeling her job was on the line if I didn't come back in one piece. And it turns out I didn't come back in one piece. Mostly one piece. So the morning of the wedding, luckily we've got some friends that are nurses. My godmother was there, she's a nurse. There was an almighty hiss that came from my leg out of nowhere. I was like, okay, that's not normal. So I've got a snake down my trousers. No, I'm not going to go there. Turned out the kind of contraption that they'd put on my leg to drain everything had depressurized. And there was a very real worry. We rang the nurse, doctor at Northern General. He was on the brink of advising us to go to our local hospital, which would have been Boston in this instance. Luckily, my godmother, absolutely, God bless her, talked him round. Everything's still in one piece, everything's still intact, there's no risk of infection, yada yada yada. She knew what to say, and she said it. So I was able to stay at my own wedding. My wife rolled me down the aisle after we'd said our to-dos. I-dos. Ran over her dress on our first dance, which, to be fair, was the least embarrassing way that first dance could have gone. There's a kind of charm to it. Got an excuse. It's an interesting one. So we're back in Bakewell. This is All Saints Church and its churchyard. Very nice. Built in 920. So it's old, even by Bakewell standards. It was built before Bakewell was Bakewell. And this place was built, it was called Badderkenweller. So this thing here, there's one. I'll go around the other side to see the other one. That's the small cross. It's not a cross. But it is quite important. And the big one is just around this corner here. They were carved in the 8th century, 9th century maybe, we're not quite sure. There's the big one. Which way do I go? That way. They say it depicts animal scenes. You can just about make out horses and stuff. That top one, second one down. Religious scenes. So it's older than the church, which is there. It's a grade 1 listed building, monument. They reckon it came from Four Lanes End at Hassop. Picture the scene. Badderkenweller. They're seeing the Norman conquest rolling through England, raping and pillaging as they go. So they changed their name to Badderkeller. Slightly more French tang to it. And are largely ignored. 1328, well after the Norman conquest. There's trouble afoot. A vicar and pastor, whatever he's called, of Bakewell, sat in his chancellery, I don't know, drinking tea, whatever they do, doing exorcisms. I don't know what they do. And on the horizon, a band of ruffians emerges, called the Cottrell Boys, Cottrell Gang, supported by a guy called Roger de Savage. So, Savage and crew, Cottrell Gang, kick him out, turf him right out of town, steal all the money from the church. All comes to a head when it found out that a guy called Robert Bernard, who was formerly the priest here, had employed those guys as ruffians to go and steal and pillage. And he was the Bishop of Lichfield. I'm sure it was all done in God's name, and he works in mysterious ways and all that stuff.